Hi there, friend. Welcome to day 2 of Belong and Rest, an immersion in your God-given identity. Thank you for coming back for day 2. I hope day 1 gave you hope and encouragement, and that as you reflected on those questions and who God says you are, that you were able to have some breakthroughs or get some ideas of ways that you can shift what you're letting define you. Today, we are talking about other things that define us and how you don't have to let them identify you or define your worth or your value. A lot of this idea, this concept, I got from listening to a sermon series by Carrie Schmidt called Unique. The idea that religion tries to define you by what you do, and the world tries to define you by what you say you are. Like here, clean slate. Write whatever you want. You are what you say you are. And that sounds great and awesome until you have to go do it and are tasked with something so huge to define everything about yourself by just what you say and by what you experience. Leaves so much room for defeat and confusion. We see that in our world evident today. I think a lot of us are what my pastor calls religious refugees, where religion has beat us up and told us some things about ourselves that aren't true in the name of God. And it's really important that we untwist those narratives. You hear that us say that on the RFWP so much. Is untwisting what religion tries to put on our shoulders, because that is a heavy burden to bear, and to be defined by what you do or by what you don't do leads to high highs and really low lows. When we allow that to happen, where we find our worth or identity in what we are accomplishing, on the days that we nail it, we're like, yes, I made it. I crossed off all the things on my list. I feel good about myself. We have like a void of needing God. And this is my chief weakness. Isn't that ironic? Weakness is self-sufficiency, trying to rely on myself. Like, I got this. And an absolute fear of failure because what it might say about my worth or value. And so there's that really low defeat. And when we let God define us instead, it's steady. And then our accomplishments and our failures, Jesus absorbs them all. It's like Lauren Daigle says, and you say, that's such a beautiful song of just declaration of belief in what God says about you. You are loved, and nothing you do changes that. You are unconditionally loved. You're also unreservedly loved. He's not dishing it out little by little, like, oh, I'll give you a little. No, he's just pouring it on thick. You're completely accepted. And I think this is a really hard concept for us to grasp. Maybe it was from a family member that disapproved of us and therefore kind of kept us at arm's length, or a society that says you have to agree with me or you get canceled, or anything like that makes us feel like acceptance is conditional. Therefore, we have to be out here proving ourselves to people. We have to be trying to earn something and say, see, I'm of value. I accomplished this. Now somebody will notice me. And what God says is the exact opposite. He's saying, I notice you and I see you even before you try to accomplish anything, before you try to prove anything. Or maybe you have tried to prove things and you found yourself in that really low place of defeat, going, maybe tomorrow I can just do better and then I'll be worth more because I accomplished more. No, God reaches in that gospel and pulls you out and says, no, you're mine. Don't let those other things say anything about your value, because you are valuable to me. One of the things that we have to let go of, though, when we rest in who God says we are and that we are His and what He says about us, so we have to let go of belonging to ourselves. And this is one of the parts where we have to surrender this. We have to surrender what other people might think of us and what the image of ourselves that we have, and be exposed and say, God, I am open. I want to know you more deeply. I want to be known, fully known. I want to not be hiding any pieces of myself. And we have to give up our own belonging as we give up our own achieving and trying to define ourselves. A couple of these verses are Galations 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. So the life we live is by faith, is by the power of God. 1 Corinthians 3 tells us, so don't boast about following a particular human leader, for everything belongs to you, whether Paul or Apollos or Peter or the world or life and death or the present and the future. Everything belongs to you, and you belong to Christ, and Christ belongs to God. So again, this is a reminder that none of these things that might change something else about us, some other identifier, a less than identifier, if I can say it that way. None of those things, even death, cannot change your identity as belonging to Christ. So 1 John 4:4 echoes some of this too. So little children, you are from God and have overcome them. We are gifted the victory that Christ made on our behalf. You are from God and have overcome them, for he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. And then one more on this thought. Song of Solomon 2:16. My beloved is mine and I am his. He pastures his flocks among the lilies. My beloved is mine and I am his. He browses among the lilies. My lover is mine and I am his. That's the thought that I want you to meditate on, rather than a specific question and lists to write out. You can put this on a post-it. You can set a timer for a minute and just meditate on it. Get your journal out, process through it, whatever helps you make space for this. And that thought is, I am not my own, but I am yours. Feel free to share what you're learning or keep it and ponder it in your heart. Either way, I hope that thought brings up and stirs some things in you as you go about your day today. I have one more story from the Bible that I want to give you for today's lesson as we close, and it is from Matthew chapter 3. Jesus is starting his earthly ministry. You can say his baptism kind of marks the beginning of his ministry at 30 years old. And as he comes out of the water, suddenly the heavens were opened and he saw the Spirit of God descending and resting on him. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." And the important thing to note here is this is before Jesus has done anything that we would consider noteworthy. He's 30 years old. He's been a carpenter. They know what town he's from. And he hasn't performed a single miracle yet. He hasn't died. He hasn't risen from the dead. He hasn't resurrected anyone else from the dead either. And the Father says, no, I am pleased with you because you are my son. And God looks at you without any accomplishments, without any shining up and dusting off your armor or yourself and trying to make yourself look more presentable or trying to achieve or accomplish or prove anything. God looks at you and says, you are mine, and that is what matters. Again, the quote or statement to sit with this week is, I am not my own, but I am yours. Have a blessed day, friend. I will see you back here tomorrow. Thank you so much. And remember, this is a win in and of itself. This is worth celebrating, taking space and time to let what God's word says about you shape you in your week, in your life. Okay, I'll see you again tomorrow.